A couple days ago, the tsunami that came from Russia uncovered some ancient petroglyphs in Hawaii on the beach. That is boring compared to what I'm about to show you with these vases. These things are from the Stone Age, and we now have data that says replicating them would be nearly impossible, and measuring them is a task in itself. There's also a hidden message in these things written in advanced geometry. The oldest of these vases are found in Sudan in burials that are 14,000 years old. The vases that we're about to talk about are found with replicas, which are really important because the replicas are made from clay. They can be dated. The Nakata culture did not have pottery wheels. That's what they're trying to copy. These are made out of granite, so thin that you can see through them. Though they look similar, there is a massive difference. To make something perfectly circular, you spin it and grind it with a fixed bit. Most people can't keep their hand from shaking while not doing anything. This machine measures how perfectly circular something is by measuring deviations. To compare their precision, a modern marble vase was made using one of these. The ancient granite vase is 5 times more precise. Now it's about to get weird. The outside diameter divided by the inside radius of the opening gives you pi. When the lip tapers into the vase, you get a new diameter. That diameter divided by the radius gives you the golden ratio. We're just getting started. A flower of life pattern defines the inner dimensions. The angle of the handle defines its center. The outer diameter is another flower of life pattern that defines the whole of the handle. The handle is a perfect torus, so precise you need a computer to show how accurate it actually is. Every curve on the jar follows a pattern called radial traversion at microscopic precision. I don't think you understand how advanced that is. To get the sizes of these circles, you have to start with a circle and fill that circle with other circles perfectly, then square that circle and do it again. That is where the spiral pattern on the imitation vases come from. You can see the radial traversion on the lip of this one. This pattern is optimized for energy flow, like the pattern of a showerhead or this satellite antenna. This level of complexity using these tools is an absolutely absurd hypothesis. So whoever made these, why did they make them? Let's use us as an example. 1977, we fired the Voyager into space with this thing on the side of it. It's a gold disc with some cryptic geometry indicating our level of technological advancement. It is a Hail Mary into the future for someone else to decode. And thanks to the work of Chris Dunn and Ben over at Uncharted X, we now have some clues into what they were trying to communicate to us. You know, I've known this, but I've never seen this before. This is what a rainbow actually looks like. They are fully circular. It's because the light hits those spheres and the way it reflects comes back to your eyeball, and if you're far enough away, you can see the full circle of the rainbow. So what does that have to do with those? Buckle up. This is what happens when you shine a light through a sphere, and this is kind of how we study optics. The light gets focused in a really specific way. It has to do with phi, the golden ratio, of course. Now you see phi everywhere. You literally can't escape it. It's like a huge twisty storm all around you. It's even in your hand. The easiest way to get this, dude, is to use a pentagram. One of those lines intersected by another line gives you phi, the golden ratio. The pentagon can also express it in its rectangular form. If you use the length of the side and flop it and draw a line up from there, you make another square of the exact same proportion. You can do this for infinity. This is where the cool spiral comes from. The golden ratio is in everything beautiful. That's why the best architecture employs it and the greatest works of art have used it. That spiral is how you perceive perspective. You can only make perspective art if you know that. So now you know why it's in the sphere. Your eye is also a sphere. Regardless of measurement, the phi ratio is always the focal point of a perfect sphere. And that just so happens to be the same angle as the Great Pyramid. The interior of the Great Pyramid also has perfect optical geometry, which indicates a focal relationship between the different bands of light that those shafts are tuned to. If we check out a heat map of the Great Pyramid, you can easily see that this is the case. And it sits perfectly within a nice band of the ionosphere, ironically. All but confirming it uses the electromagnetic spectrum as well. We also know that passing high voltage through a pyramid shapes the discharge in a very specific way. How they did it, still a mystery. That crap is a distraction, don't worry about it. The juicy, interesting stuff is in the geometry. Huge news out of Egypt. And this time it's not what's in the sand, it's what's in the rock. Exotic metals from the cutting tool have been found lodged inside the rock. And they're typically only found in asteroids and meteorites. They've also been found in megalithic sites all over the world. Back in February, I was in the largest and crispiest temple in all of Egypt, Karnak. I had watched this video by Versadoko, and it was saying how these are unexplainable cut marks because the cuts are microscopically small. There is no reasonable explanation for a cut that sharp even today without lasers. This research team got a sample and they were looking for exotic metals that the Egyptians did not have, which they found, but they also found these. Let me explain what these lines are. When we cut granite today, we use giant saws. These saws leave a circular tool mark like the stone my dog Harvey is guarding. What was found in the Karnak stones were perfectly straight lines, which means in layman's terms that something was cutting it more like butter than like a circular saw. Anytime you cut anything, it leaves a mark. Inside those marks are microscopic cracks where pieces of the tool can embed itself, but that typically only happens with high-speed rotation. So they got their hands on another sample from Dashur. This one has a sloping cut, which is insanely difficult to manufacture. In this one, they found 3 elements that are typically only used in the cooling circuits of nuclear reactors. When they compared this ancient cut to a modern cut of the same material, the only difference was the aged appearance. Now, the material they found the most of was copper. It was an alloy that the Egyptians could not have produced enough heat to make. Best guess was that they used chemical salts to intensify a natural reaction to create more heat. To create the metal, they would need microscopic precision in the mixture. That is something that we do for electronic circuits. Atomic level imperfections are introduced in silicon to produce transistors. But just by doing that, a simple rock gets transformed into something that can show you, me. But we haven't even got to the wildest part. Microspherules were also found in the samples. These only come from cosmic impacts, volcanoes, lightning strikes, geological processes, and human industrial processes. It happens when something gets really hot and cools really fast. These were found in Dashur, in Baalbek, in Iran, and pretty much everywhere that has megalithic architecture. Well, how do we rule out geology? Baalbek. A typical meteorite. Meteorites have about 1 per square meter. Baalbek had 3 per centimeter. One thing that can do this is something called cavitation. If you symmetrically compress a water bubble, it'll release energy. It's the main reason that propellers on boats get worn out so fast. Here you can see what happens in this gear. You can see it happening in this gear, but there's another way to do it. If you hit aluminum foil with ultrasonic frequencies, it creates these holes. With the right frequency, silver is a byproduct. Now, there has been demonstrations of vibrating a rock and then putting a tube drill with weight on top of it, and it will actually drill the hole itself. Now, with water involved, there could be a cavitation effect going on there, but this has not been studied. What is for sure is there is some atomic alchemy going on. Breathe, break, take a deep one through your nose. We are in a fear cycle of content, and if I can show you something that's just crazy enough to blow your mind, maybe we can escape it temporarily. This is one of the craziest things I've ever learned about ancient Egypt, and it has to do with the Milky Way. So when we're looking at the Milky Way, we are looking straight through it. That's called the Great Rift, and these guys use it to navigate. It's how they roll the dung balls back home. Also, one of the most popular symbols in ancient Egypt, associated with the god Khepri. Khepri uses starlight to navigate through the afterlife. Same way our boy brings home his very own poop star. Now, the scarab mainly represented life. Not eternal, but mortal life. But they also threw protection in there per usual. So I flew down there and I talked to a bunch of people to get clarification on what this actually means. This guy has a protective circle. The feathers are the angles that light gets reflected inside a sphere. A perfect optical sphere will break white light up into its red, green, and blue colors, which you can see on the wings of the beetle. The angle at which it does that is the angle of the Great Pyramid. So the solar disk that the beetle is holding gets split up into its colors, and those wings go into the scarab. The scarab is the protective layer for the soul. That's represented by those hands called the Ka. The human is that light manifested. The top-down view of your skull is the same shape as the scarab shell. With the scarab's wings unfolded, it matches up with the 2 hemispheres of the brain. That solar disk is right where your optic nerves meet in here. And if you look at an MRI, you'll see why the legs are positioned in the way that they are. This one is the navigator, but that's for a later video. I've all wondered it, I'll say it. How do you have a cartoon language and make perfectly geometric buildings or perfectly symmetrical sculptures, or carve a vase out of granite with math, or line an entire section of the earth up to the sky? Why is there such a huge difference between the hieroglyphs and everything else? Hieroglyphs are actually a perfect language. You can't improve them anymore, and they just showed up like this. There's no practice. They just appeared. Here's why. In college, we had to take a class called Technical Drafting. So before computers did all of this, to make this part, you had to provide a bunch of different views so the machinist knew the dimensions. Hieroglyphs do this exactly. They achieve the exact same result. This is an instructional form of writing. You can show depth or quantity. You can show what's inside of a basket or a bag. Show a cross-section or a schematic of a house. That's exactly how we do this today. If your entire population knows how to read this, you can communicate complex concepts like consciousness or steps to navigating the afterlife, underworld. You could indicate which parts of the brain need to be engaged to accomplish specific things. This is not limited to Egypt. If you're from Greece or Rome, you see a lot of human forms because they were focused on the human aspects of consciousness, democracy, philosophy, order. In the Vedic culture, you'll see a lot of fractal art and architecture. They understood the link between the macro, the large scale, and the micro, the small scale. They were able to culturally transmit that to us. We recognize this at CERN. Okay, Americas. We just use our eyes here. Biology, nature, cycles, seasons. Each has a specialized system. The problem is translating their mythology into technology. They did not have microscopes. They did not have microchips. They did not have computers. We've only been using technical drawings for 200 years. Egypt had been using them for 3,000 years. We're only able to see this because the internet connecting us shows us how connected they were. Think about that one. Every temple in Egypt has these strange skylights that let these beams of light shine in, and you can use them as a flashlight if you let them hit your hand. Now, the purpose of these is going to melt your mind, but first we have to understand how light and color works. The primary colors are red, green, and blue, just like Horus, the falcon representing the sun. Inside Egyptian temples, you're going to see cyan, magenta, and yellow all over the place. These are the secondary colors. These are the shadow colors, but when they interact, they do something magical. When the primary color mixes with its opposite secondary color, they cancel out, they disappear. Now, when you go into one of these temples, you'll notice that each room has one of these skylights and they're shaped like a pyramid. And you can see the walls are covered head to toe in hieroglyphs. At specific times of the day and the year, the sun will point to a specific part of the wall. The type of paint and the angle of the light can reveal even more information in each room. It gets even deeper. Throughout the year, the sun traces a path that looks like an infinity sign. This would be impossible on a flat earth because we're on a fucking sphere. And the Egyptians knew this. Throughout the year, different colors of the visible spectrum become more dominant. If you're aware of this, information can be used or revealed at certain times of the year. Then you, the data packet, can do something with that information. There's a discovery in Egypt that's going to rewrite history, and it's not in Giza. It's in this little oasis called Hawara. And as far as we know, it's the biggest thing that they ever built. It was uncovered in the 1800s by this guy here, but not entirely. Buried in the sand was ruins from an ancient Roman settlement. When he dug deeper, he found what he thought was the foundations of the ancient lost labyrinth of Egypt. But he actually found the roof, and it's now been confirmed that it's real. There used to be a big old temple at the site. Over thousands of years, it was disassembled and used as a quarry. But in 2008, an expedition was led to scan the site with ground-penetrating radar, and what they found were the remnants of the labyrinth. Now, what came back was megalithic architecture. That is similar to what you would see at the Osirian or the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau. Huge blocks, similar to what the mud brick pyramid is actually hiding underneath it. These were uncovered back in the 1800s. But since then, the construction of the dam in Egypt has raised the water table and is now destroying what's underneath it. What's under this pyramid is nothing short of insane. There's these trapdoor blocks that are absolutely massive. They were never engaged. Then hiding directly under the center of this pyramid is a 110-ton block of red quartzite. That is 200 tons. Then the lid is made of bigger stones, and then an even bigger stone is on top of that, and then there's bigger stones on top of that. I warned you. So with the ancient entrance and the ground scan confirming that there's something under there, the satellite team was brought out. There are chambers and tunnels that go down multiple levels into the earth. This confirms the legends from the ancient Greeks who went to visit. Now, what does this place actually contain? Allegedly, some of the origins of humanity. More walls equals more space. Enough space to tell our origin story. And the latest scan of one of these chambers has showed that there's something in there, and it's metallic. There's an interesting way of travel in Egypt, and it's not on a boat. it's in these. These are giant granite boxes. This one's in Edfu Temple, and it's a throne. The temple itself shows you how to use these boxes for solar travel. You don't enter the temple from your temple, the two sides. You enter the temple from the center. Center is the corpus callosum that links the two hemispheres together. So symbolically, when you link the two hemispheres together, you earn yourself a wedget. Wedget comes out of the third eye, the one that can see the snakes. The wisdom of the snake is the physics of vibration today. Now the box is on the boat because the box carries you through the wormhole. That is the boat. That boat sits on the vibrations of the microcosm, the atomic, and the macrocosm, the galactic. So how do you interact with all this? The physical layers of your body are what you're inhabiting right now. The nervous system animates this matter using a mysterious force that science will not recognize. Closest analog that we have would probably be plasma. That invisible body is called the Mer-Ka-Ba. Mer being the light wave. The Ka and the Ba are your individual expression of the entire spirit of the universe. Mer-Ka-Ba is the vehicle used to surf those waves like Kelly Slater. Everything is working in torus or donut form. Electromagnetic link is the stream or channel that's created by the earth and the sun. If you're watching this video right now, you're on the shore, you're out of the stream. Enter the stream means to get in a boat. This is the coolest thing you're going to see all day today. So every temple has a key to unlock its knowledge. And this one is Edfu. The part you're looking at is called the Naus. It's where all the most sacred information is kept. It's the main part of the temple. The question we should all be asking is, why does the temple look the way it does? It's not an artistic choice. Someone didn't just decide it. Every temple is designed with a geometrically harmonic encryption. Every single feature of the temple is geometrically constrained to every other feature. We don't do this today because it's exceptionally hard to do and expensive. The Great Pyramid just so happens to be the key that allows you to read Edfu's geometry. It looks hard, it's really easy. The tip of a Great Pyramid here and the base on this line, then center it with the column and you get the dimensions of the main doorway. Let's do another one. Still using the Great Pyramid. Again, put a corner at the doorway we just got. The other corner goes into the center of that wall right there. That gives you the roof line of the doorway and the center of the first column. Let's do one more. 3 harmonically spaced, centrally aligned Great Pyramids get you the walls for each of those panels. A Great Pyramid from the center of that column to the center of the temple gets you the roof line for those wall panels. You're probably thinking that took a long time to figure out. But the beauty of this system is you can pretty much just draw the key anywhere and discover how to construct the temple. Using this, you can hide information in plain sight. They did this with their pottery. They hid things with shadows. Some of the keys can only be viewed from the sky. Others, you have to be standing at the right angle. Some were hidden in art, some were hidden in the symmetry of that art, some were hidden in the precision of the symmetry of that art. Even hieroglyphics are not safe from the encryption. Each constraint or key that you use is not just a linear progression in difficulty. It gets exponentially harder to create this stuff. That's the point. You can't even understand it unless you've already reached their level. Egyptian headdresses are trippy. They're more like the badges on a general's uniform than an actual crown. Symbolically and biologically, they represent different parts of the brain. This one is on Khem. Just to reinforce that their concepts, none of these have ever been found in real life, anywhere. Let's break down a few just to prove this. The little circle in the center, that is the pineal gland. The one on top of the hat is the pituitary gland. The top-down view up here is showing the third ventricle from the side. But this guy is gonna get you. This is the corpus callosum. It connects both sides of the brain and straddles the third ventricle. Those are ostrich feathers, and this is awesome because the Egyptians make you work for this. The ostrich is a flightless bird. Now, if you understand Horus, this will make a lot more sense. Horus is the concept of the primary emissions of the sun. Think colors. So a flightless bird is that concept grounded in the brain. And guess what the corpus callosum does? Connecting the two hemispheres, it allows for coherent perception of vision. So now when you see someone wearing this, you know they understand the concepts of physics, biology, neurology, geometry, and ostriches. And that is just the surface. If you understand this, you're gonna be fine. You'll be okay, because this is a big one. This is an optical phenomenon called my scattering, and that is an eagle flying with a deer. That's an eagle trying to kill a goat. Globally, the symbol of the eagle has been used for almost all of human history, especially the winged disc. Most ancient traditions have a bird like Garuda that symbolized wisdom or light. That's why there's fire and light around it, like the Byzantine eagle here. The eagle then got mutated into an empire symbol, and then now we have the American eagle, which we all know. Okay, so why the bird though? There's a lot of cool creatures on the planet. Why the bird? Well, in that video, I showed you how ancient Sumer's art is actually describing diffraction patterns. They educated through art, so you learn through experience instead of sitting in a classroom all day. Okay, so when we pass light through a lens, the shape of the lens affects how the light comes out of the lens. Easy enough. When you pass it through a sphere though, it looks like this. The light parts are when the diffracted waves amplify, and the dark parts are where they cancel out. So when we look at it like a point source shining on a sphere, then we have the diffraction pattern. There are no eagles with red, green, and blue feathers in Egypt. It's illustrating chromatic aberration. That pendant was found in King Tut's tomb. It is the royal falcon of Egypt. Now when people explain Egypt, they say, oh, this symbolized this, or this was a myth for this, and it makes it really fun for kids to learn. That's why it's not interesting, because people just parrot off what they heard it means instead of actually digging into why it means that thing. Horus was light. The seraphim in the Bible, orbs with wings, same thing. There's different ways of saying the same thing. So what does this have to do with the American eagle? Well, clearly they stole the symbol, but for a good reason. If you have not been living under a rock, you'll know that the Washington Monument is an obelisk, and inside of that obelisk, you can go inside and go to the top. To go up it, you take an elevator with G-Dub's face on it, but most people completely miss what's above his head. It is an Egyptian winged disc. But do you know the connection? There's actually no good explanation for these. Forget explaining them, no one can even move them. These are the enormous granite boxes of the Serapeum. The ancient Egyptians felt it necessary to put 24 granite boxes underground. All of them except that one were found opened, and there was nothing in them. Each of them are 70 to 100 tons carved out of granodiorite, which is a little bit harder than normal granite. It is said that they contained the mummies of bulls, but none were ever found. Those dents are where cracks were. They carved them out so they wouldn't spread. But who cares about a crack if you're making it as a coffin for a mummified bull? The only way a crack would spread is through vibration or fluctuating hot and cold, called heat cycling. That sounds functional to me. When I went there, you could get in and look at this one. It is perfectly cut with a mirror finish, but when you look close, you'll see that the box is so hard they could only scratch the hieroglyphs in. So why did they put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari when they could clearly make hieroglyphs very deep like these ones in Luxor? That's red quartzite, and those hieroglyphs are carved about an inch deep into the rock. So the dynastics couldn't carve in the box, and we can't move it. But the claim is they were rolled on logs that would theoretically explode under the weight. None were ever found, and we would need 500 really jacked dudes to move this sucker. There's not enough space for a forklift, or we would have moved it, let alone 500 dudes. Here's another thing. If they didn't have electricity, they would have had to light this tunnel with fire. But as you can see, there's no soot on the ceiling. Now, any other temple in Egypt that you go to that's been re-inhabited has a thick layer of soot on the ceiling. How did they see? There's also a closed off area with the biggest box that's shoved against a corner. You can't fit a human back there to get leverage to lift it. Now all of these boxes are connected by underground tunnels to the step pyramid of Djoser. Now cross-reference what the Egyptians, the Hindu, and the Sumerians were all actually talking about when they were referring to the bull. That might make a lot more sense. My full analysis of this site will be posted on YouTube a little later after I do a Q&A with my school. Antiquitex is also getting a Temple Tech update after our adventures in Egypt. That's where you find all that if you're not a bull mummy box boy or girl. The future is right now. Underwater communication like dolphins. I'm talking your movements, your bio signals, your thoughts even can be transmitted through the water and read by a device now. It works kind of like your ear. Sound goes through the air, taps the little drumstick on your cochlea like Morse code. That spirals the signal into an electrical signal that your brain can read and process. This thing is wild though. Say a signal is generated in this chamber here. It travels through the main part, hitting these crystal pillars. Those things, when they compress with the sound wave, generate electricity. you're probably wondering what these hollow guys here are for. Each of them resonates at a specific frequency. When they work together, they make sure that the frequencies in the main chamber stays within a certain range. They're like little speed regulators on your car. If they're not there, that little device can't pick it up, like you hearing something that's too high outside of your hearing range. The exact same concept works in high-speed internet, like the fiber optic internet in your house. Same concept. So your movements, your heart rate, even your thoughts, get separated and organized electrically by the chambers and the pillars. You may be wondering why there's a compass in the image up top here. That's because the device I just described isn't a computer chip. It's one of the most ancient sites in all of Egypt, the Osirian. There are resonant chambers and 100-ton crystal pillars made of granite that had to be moved from 326 kilometers away. And those chambers actually resonate at 68 to 137 hertz. The Osirian is so old, it was excavated by the ancient Egyptians who were building a temple right behind it. That one's called the Temple of Seti I. I'm sure you're wondering why the water's green, but you should be wondering why the water's there in the first place, because it's the desert. Nobody knows. That central island the pillars sit on is also made out of giant blocks of rock. It goes down 5 stories into the ground. Nobody knows how deep the water goes because nobody can get through the mud. You see the corner over here? There was a tool used to flatten the rocks that could scoop it out like butter. Explain that one. Actually, let's run it back a little bit more. You notice anything weird about the stones in the wall? Actually, this one's just for the ancient homies. If you know this one, you know. The reason I use the device as an example is because it uses something called a transceiver, and that's the circuit diagram for it. That is the Osirian from above. A transceiver converts electricity to sound and sound to electricity, or light to electricity, or electricity to light. But you'll learn that that thing was simply built for a ritual. If you're still on the fence, this is the optimal way to set up a 5G array to get the best coverage and best signal. That pattern is called the flower of life. That thing is seen everywhere in the ancient world. Now, if you ever visit the Osirian, look at this pillar right here, because molecularly burned into that pillar is the same exact symbol. And the dudes that wrote what this thing was for didn't even have electricity. Someone's got to swim in that still water, though. It's not me. Most people don't know these exist. Deep shafts like the new ones are not uncommon in Egypt. Most of us learn about the pyramids first, and then maybe some temple stuff. But on the causeway leading up to the middle pyramid, there is at least 5 of these shafts. These go deep into the ground. Some of them hit the water table. They're weird shapes. We may not even know about all of them because 1% of Giza is excavated. Most people don't hear about them because there's no good explanation for why they exist in the first place. It, of course, gets weirder. The causeway itself is hollow. If you walk on it, you'll find cracks and you can put sand in there and it just will keep filling up. It is made of enormous stones that serve as the roof. It was tiled on top too. Ancient builders didn't even care if you saw how big the rock was that they moved, which is also not uncommon. The most famous and mysterious shaft in this whole place is the Osiris shaft under the causeway. It's 3 levels and once held these guys. Sarcophagi similar to the Serapeum. What's really weird is one of them's made out of dacite, which is not found anywhere in Africa. They somehow dropped this 40-ton box in there. 3rd level somehow fills up perfectly with water and has a sarcophagus in the middle. Nothing was ever found in it. Go over to the step pyramid. There is a shaft in the middle of the step pyramid that goes straight into the bedrock and one right next to it. By far the craziest place was discovered using a similar technology that they used to discover this. It's called Hawara. The top of the site absolutely destroyed. Underground, a labyrinth that is 18 meters deep on the 1st level and 40 meters deep for the 2nd level. The entire complex isn't even fully mapped yet. The area that we know is 51 football fields large, with 5 chambers the size of Olympic swimming pools. We are quite literally just scratching the surface of what we know here. We just so happen to be standing at the entrance to the rabbit hole. By far, the weirdest thing I experienced in Egypt was not the giant mega box of granite, but it was on the same island that box is on. We accidentally ran an experiment on the island, actually, with some copper. I am still trying to wrap my head around this. The place is called Elephantine Island, arguably one of the most beautiful places in Egypt. The temple itself is 5,000 years old and in absolute shambles. That is literally all that's left. and somehow the giant box has remained intact. So we're walking through this temple, and I look over and I see my friend Chelsea putting this box on the altar there. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, so we just kept walking and explored the rest of the temple. When we get back to the boat, she shows us her tensors. These are wound copper pendants. You can't bend them yourself. Ironically, the only ones that got deformed were the ones that have the same exact shape of a magnetic field. I thought she was fucking with me, so I tried to bend them back into place, and I could not do it. What does this mean? We've got to use some context clues here, so we'll go back to this giant box. Made out of solid granite, would have gone in the center of a temple, Holy of Holies, like in Ed. They have to do with these solar boats. Egyptian lore tells us that these boats were a method of traveling through the netherworld. The snake in this one is around the sun god. We know they're not boats because on the hieroglyphs we always see them with stars. And ironically, they actually resemble a wormhole pretty closely. Mainstream story tells us that these are for divine protection, maybe protecting the divine. So if you got in one of these, what happened? Well, what do we use rock for? We put our most sensitive detectors in rock to shield from the electromagnetic interference of other parts of the spectrum. The use of very specific materials indicates a function, not a decorative choice. Now, the tensors weren't hooked up to a power source or anything like this. They were just in a box by themselves. So that specific geometry has some sort of interaction with whatever is flowing through Elephantine Island. Hear me out. Okay, I didn't know if this was even real, so I flew 8,000 miles across the ocean to try and find it carved into a wall, and I did. In Edfu, which I will explain the importance of later. But first, we need to break down what the whole hieroglyph means first. So we'll start with the Ankh. That is toroidal geometry, or the geometry of a smoke ring. Donut. Air goes in the top, it shoots out as a tornado in the bottom. The sides form a donut shape containing all the smoke. Cut it in half, it looks like an apple. You can make this geometry just by using harmonically drawn circles. The Ankh is a shorthand icon, so you don't have to draw those circles, but every culture has really encapsulated the shape in some form or another. Even our fusion reactors use this geometry for energy production. This guy, Bob Grenier, tipped me off to this when he was describing how the thunderstorm generator worked. That thing takes exhaust gas, like from your car, and literally transmutes it into breathable oxygen using plasma. So what about the JED? The JED generates the magnetic field that shapes the plasma into a donut. The Greek Ionic column and the Sumerian column also show magnetic geometry. But the biggest clue is in a relief in Abydos. The pillar's tilted the same degree the Earth is tilted, which is determined by the rotation of the insides of the planet. That rotation creates the magnetic field of the planet and is the reason why we see auroras, which are also plasma. Now, I didn't just find this in one place in Edfu, I found it all over Edfu. This is crazy because Edfu is a very special temple. Edfu tells the story of the original followers of Horus who built Egypt. They called it Zep Tepi, the first occurrence. It's in the Edfu building text. Plato got the entire Atlantis legend from Solon. This is after Solon visited Egypt, likely at Edfu. Could the walls be showing how they did it? The entire planet needs to see this video. Literally. When you enter the Great Pyramid through the main entrance, which is absolutely massive, you are confronted with what's referred to as the Grand Gallery. After you travel through that little guy, you are in the King's Chamber. This chamber is two perfect squares side by side. No measurement, just proportion. I extensively cover this in geometrics, but let me explain why this is important. Two squares, any size, width is 1, length is 2. The diagonal is 2.236 in units, not measurement. If you add those together, you get 5.236. So the perimeter of that triangle. 5.236 is the measurement of the width of the King's Chamber in meters. But the meter was discovered in the 1700s by using the circumference of the Earth. It wasn't as accurate though, because the Earth isn't perfectly spherical, but it was still a close standard. Today we use the speed of light, which is the Great Pyramid's latitude. The square base of the Great Pyramid is a scaled down measure of the Earth's circumference. If you draw a circle in the measurements of the Great Pyramid, it will give you the length of a tropical year, which is the time it takes the sun to come back to the same position. There's actually so many of these, I could probably make a documentary on it, which I might do.